Hello everybody, today I am going to talk about Keycloak Spring Security Client Adapter. In my previous video, I talked about Spring Boot Client Adapter. If you are interested in that video, I have included the link in the description area. First, I will take you through the Keycloak server configurations. After that, I will come to the client application which uses Spring Security. Now I am in the realm named Hexadefense. Let's create a new client. I am going to use the client name as Adapter Client, which is my client ID. Save. Here I set the access type as confidential. I am going to provide a redirect URL here. This is an endpoint of my application. Once authentication is successful, the user will be redirected to this URL. I also provide an admin URL. This is used by Keycloak to push revocation policies such as single logout. Normally, this URL is the base URL of the client application. This URL is implicitly supported by Keycloak Client Adapters. If you are not using an adapter, you need to manually implement it, but it is an optional feature. Now I am going to save my client. Right, client was saved. Client credentials can be obtained from Credentials tab. This is the client secret. We are going to use this secret in our client application. Now I am going to create few client roles. They can be created using roles section. First I am going to create a role named role user. I am going to create another role named role employee. Also I am adding another role named role manager. Now roles are created successfully. Now I am going to assign few of these roles to a user of this realm. We have a user named Hexa. I am going to assign few of above roles to this user. Here I am going to select the client application I just created, which is Adapter Client, and these are the three roles we have already created, and I am going to add role user and role employee to this user. Now roles are added to this particular user. Now configuration part is done. Let's move on to the client application. Here I have already created the client application and I will take you through each important section. This is a Spring Boot project which supports Java 8 and Gradle is the build tool I have used. I generated this project using Spring Initializer, and after that Keycloak related dependencies were added manually. I will begin to explain from the Gradle file. Here you can see I have included the Keycloak BOM, which stands for Bill of Material. After that I have included three dependencies as Keycloak Spring Security Adapter, Spring Boot Starter Security, and Spring Boot Starter Web. This is the Spring Security Adapter application class. This class contains the main method. You can see here I have included enable method security annotation. Also, I have set pre-post enable property to true. Next, I will move on to controllers and service classes. This is the class named simple controller. This is a REST control and request mapping path is set as API. This class declares 3 endpoints using 3 methods. First endpoint is public. Next endpoint is protected employee endpoint. Last endpoint is protected manager endpoint. Next, I am moving on to service class. It contains 2 methods. You can see the first method named execute employee operation can be executed by only users who have roles either employee or manager. The second method can be executed by only the users having role manager. Hope you can remember we created these roles in Keycloak server as client roles. We created them as role underscore employee, role underscore manager and role underscore user. But this additional prefix, which is role, is removed by Spring Security. You only need to include the remaining parts of the role name. So it is something related to Spring Security. I am not going to talk about that in this video. Next, I move into some important section which is about application configurations. First, I am going to bean config class. Spring Security Adapter needs to know the HTTP session changes. Therefore, we need to register a HTTP session event publisher in order to work this configuration properly. Next, I am going to security configurations. Here I have added the special annotation named Keycloak configuration. After that, I have registered Keycloak authentication provider with the authentication manager. After that, I have defined the session authentication strategy. You can see here. This is my HTTP security configurations. Here I have used the default configurations provided by Keycloak using super.configure method. These are the default configurations provided by Keycloak Client Adapter. I hope you can go through and understand these things alone. After that, I have added my own configurations here. You can see I have made API public endpoint accessible to everyone. I have enabled API protected endpoints accessible only for users having role user. I have set the logout request path and the method as get. This is only for demonstration purpose. Also, I have set the logout success URL as API public. After successful logout, user will be redirected to here. Next, I will move into resources folder where I have created 2 files. First, I will show you the Keycloak JSON file. It contains the details about the Keycloak server. Also, you can see I have disabled SSL using SSL required property. Resource name is the name of the client we created. It is adapter client. I showed you how to get credentials of the client. You need to add that secret value here. User resource mapping set to true. I will explain what is resource role mappings. Normally, once the user is successfully authenticated, client application gets a JWT token containing user's details as a result of OpenID Connect authentication flow. By setting this value as true, we request client adapter to find the authenticated user's roles inside the client section of the JWT token. If we set this value as false, client adapter will find user roles inside realm related sections. Therefore, if we assign client roles to the user, we need to set this value as true. Next, move on to application.properties file. Class path :keycloak.json means Keycloak JSON file is available in the class path. Normally, in Spring Boot applications, all the files added to resources folder will be copied to class path when we create an artifact. Now I am going to run this application. First I need to log out from Keycloak. I am going to start my application. Application is running successfully. First I am going to access the public URL of the application. Public URL is accessible. Now I am going to access protected endpoints. First I am going to access protected/employee endpoint. Now I was redirected to Keycloak server in order to get my credentials. I am providing a username and password. Hexa is the user. We provided a set of roles such as role user and role employee. Those two roles belong to Hexa user, but we did not provide role manager to Hexa user. I am giving the password as well. Right. Now I can access the protected resource, which is employee endpoint. Now I am going to access the other endpoint, which is protected manager endpoint. As expected, we got an error saying there was an unexpected error, type forbidden, status 403. I hope you can remember in our service class we have added some access control methodologies using Spring Boot pre-authorized annotation. Let me show you them. Here you can see execute manager operation method can be executed by only the users who have manager role. But the user we used for authentication does not have manager role. Therefore, that particular user is not allowed to go inside. In order to execute this method, our user should have manager role also assigned. With this, we came to the end of this video. If you have any question about this video or about Keycloak, please put them in the comment sections. I am more than happy to answer them. See you in the next video. Thank you very much.